probably still make some good money. Like I'm sure like a lot of the young like 20-something supermodels are probably pretty short odds. Pete Davidson probably long odds. Oh yeah, that's the hot rumor. Joker's heating up for the start of the show. What is happening, Stokastic Hippopotamus fans? Welcome to the NBA Live Before Lock show for Saturday. Let's call it January 21st. How about that? We've got a big football slate going on right now, but we've got a 6-game basketball slate to talk about tonight. So should be a good one. Trying to keep Joker quiet underneath the table here while I'm doing the intro to the show. I am joined by my pal, Matt LaMarca. He's going to take us through all the ins and the outs. We're going to try and go, I think, Matt, if it makes sense to you, try and go through this game by game because there was no deeper dive before us. So we'll go through the games for the people, but if anything, crazy urgent pops up, I think we'll, weave our way in and out of that. And we'll start things off, with why don't you say hi and then just give us like your 50,000-foot view of the slate, kind of like injuries that you're waiting on news for, things that people should be prepped for going into our game by game description here. But first off, how you doing, buddy? What's going on? Welcome to
I'm doing wonderful. Hoping Patrick Mahomes is okay.
Likewise.
He got banged up there in the first half, so. Obviously, that's going to have an impact on things like DFS and just the outcome of this game. But like football would not be nearly as fun without Patrick Mahomes. So just hoping just for the sake of us as fans, he'll be okay. So as for this slate, lots of injury stuff to keep an eye on. The big one, I think, is Philadelphia. And of course, it's the last game of the night, where they have both Embiid and Harden listed as questionable. So that's going to be a very tough spot to navigate. You've also got Anthony Edwards for the Timberwolves. You've got the DeAndre Ayton for the Suns, Gobert. Like it's a slate with some big names who are unknown at the moment. Not new for a Saturday. It seems like during the weekend, the NBA is it's almost optional these days as to whether or not these guys play sometimes. So, and again, with a lot of
slate, this is why I prefer being on the strategy show rather than live before lock on Saturday, because I'd rather be watching this show and building lineups than trying to build lineups and doing this show at the same time because of all those landmines. Keep going.
It's definitely a challenge. And of course, the first game of the night, there's really nothing going on. So that's just fantastic all around for us. But, there are some interesting games. I mean, Sacramento's on the slate, Indiana's on the slate, Houston's on the slate. Like, there's a lot of good teams to target today. So, we're just going to have to be staying abreast to the latest news and making sure that we're adjusting.
Yep. And we're brought to you, gang, by No House Advantage, our great sponsors who have been really sponsoring all of Hippopotamus Week here at Stokastic. So thank you to them one more time. Oh, you didn't know you haven't been paying attention to Hippopotamus Week?
I have not.
Would you rather fight a hippopotamus or a velociraptor?
I mean, I'm not going to win either. I imagine I would take on a hippo, though.
Okay. The original was gorilla with an O, not like a freedom fighter in the jungle, but like a King Kong kind of a guy.
Either way, I'm at a
so the original
size.
started
the
with
raptor's going to just tear you to bits. You can't fight a raptor.
As the hippo.
It doesn't matter. It'll be a more methodical death than just getting torn to shreds by the most vicious dinosaur that ever lived.
At least if you choose a velociraptor, it's going to be scored by John Williams. I will say that. And also, I will throw in that a real life velociraptor, it turned out that they were like the size of a chicken, but there is a different kind of raptor that's like, the size in the movie. So we'll just pretend. Anyway, that's been a topic of conversation back and forth. If you guys have no idea what we're talking about, if you haven't been around, it's been a little bit of a conversation at the site, a lot of discussion, a lot of fun going on with that throughout the week. But we are brought to you by our pals at No House Advantage, our great sponsors. They sponsor all the shows at the site lately, or a ton of the shows. Anyway, I shouldn't say all. We've got to talk about them later on. We've got to talk about a great offer from our pals at BetMGM later on as well as a 5 days for free sub offer. But for right now, hit the old like button. Hit the subscribe button. Subscribing helps you. You find out when we go live. Liking it helps us. The Hall of Fame's out there too. I'm not sure if it's in the REITs today, but I'm going to tell you about it real quick. If you finish in the top 3 in a contest with more than 5,000 people in it on DK, on FanDuel, on one of these big sites, and you've got the Stokastic logo as your avatar on that site, tweet a screenshot of that result. It's got to be visible in the screenshot at Stokastic HOF on Twitter. Send that out to us. Give us a little blurb about who you are, what you did, what you won, all that good stuff, so that it makes it sound good and we've got something to talk about. We'll shout it out on our shows. We put it in the Hall of Fame. You win a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. It's that easy. So at Stokastic HOF if you do that. Let's dive into this one. One thing that stood out to me when I was putting the run sheet together, Matt, the second game that we'll talk about, the Bucks at Cavs, is at a 217.5 total, where the rest of these games are in and about 230, with the Rockets and Timberwolves floating out to the 238 spot. Before we dive into this Magic Wizard, since like you said, there's not that much to talk about here. This one's kind of straightforward. We know what's going on with it. What do you do with a game like that, especially when we know there's no Giannis in that game? We know the pace, the defense, and everything there. What impact does that have? Is it just however the math bears things out, or do you make specific changes when you see an outlier total like that, 15 and change points below some of these other games?
Yeah, I'm not like specifically excluding that game just because it has a roughly 10-point lower total, especially when you factor in, that Milwaukee is presenting some injury value. So I'm totally cool with players popping up in my builds from that contest. 3-point spread as well. So it does suggest that this will at least be a competitive game, which is always a good thing, the chance for overtime, whatever. I don't think you can be really affording to just completely cross off games on a 6-game slate. If you're building multiple lineups. If you're just building a couple and you wanted to just take that game and kind of, move on, I think that's okay. I don't think there's a huge issue with that, but once you're getting to 10 plus lineups, I think eliminating a game entirely on a 6-game slate is probably a mistake.
Yeah, and it's never, even, 3-game slate, something like that, it's never something I'm really looking to do, or excuse me, a larger slate, not a smaller slate, 8-game, 10-game, 12-game. It's not really something I'm looking to do, but I think it just naturally happens through our projections, through how the numbers come together, that you're going to get fewer of these guys. And I think we'll see that when we get to that game, that Milwaukee value situation, not necessarily presenting the crazy massive upside that it did, because we've got some other tremendous value spots to talk about on the board. But let's start out with this first game here. We'll get into some of the game by game. I'm going to try and keep my eye on news, but chat and News God, especially if you're in the YouTube chat, shout it out. And Matt, if you see anything on news that you need to shout out, feel free to cut me off at any time. Let's dive in. Say again. Oh, thank you, Mike. Yeah, Mikey's got us too. Great producer, Mike Lawrence, in the background. Give him some thumbs up, love there, people. But start us off here, Matt. Tell us, Orlando Magic going into Washington, 7-point dogs. Last I saw, 230-point total in this one. Start us out on the Orlando side of things. What do we see from the Magic here?
Yeah, so for Orlando, as far as like injuries, nothing new. The one exception is RJ Hampton was a late scratch kind of with a illness. That's pretty irrelevant. So for the most part, the Magic are going to be at full strength here tonight. And they're a team that, not really popping in the projections. They're kind of just standing out as a not overpriced, but certainly not an underpriced type of team. I think that Wendell Carter Jr. is their best option. He's 6,300 on DraftKings. He's been a decent fantasy producer, 1.07 DraftKings points per minute this season. The matchup against Washington is fine. Two poor games in a row for Wendell, but we know that this is the type of guy that can get us, 40 or so at 6,300. That's fine. I'll also say that Markelle Fultz stands out as a nice, just a pure value when you look at his salary on DraftKings compared to what it is on FanDuel. Fultz is 7,400 on FanDuel, 6,100 on DraftKings. So anytime you can get a kind of a discrepancy like that, I'm always kind of looking to take advantage on the site where they're significantly cheaper. Markelle Fultz has been at 1.11 DraftKings points per minute over the past month. So a really good producer there on a per minute basis. The Magic have a lot of backcourt options all of a sudden, but Fultz can probably get us to roughly 30 minutes here. And with how he has produced recently, I think that gives him just a little bit of upside at 6,100.
Yeah, absolutely. And some sleeper upside too. He's not a guy that's really smashing through in any of our probability numbers in terms of his optimal rate on DK, where you called him out, 3% optimal, 3% boom score probability, but we're expecting him for around 27 points in the median at 6,100 on a short slate. I do think there's some value there, and he's only going to be owned about 3% of the time. So appropriately owned, you can go to him, 10 times, a dozen times, be a little bit over the field, around the field, 15 times around the field, and probably be okay there with some upside for, the points per minute opportunity. We are projecting for about 28 minutes tonight. It's about his season average. So I do think there's some decent upside there. And like you said, Banchero, Franz Wagner, all these other guys, you look at the optimal rates, everybody below 10% on both sites, all the boom score probabilities on both sites below 10%, except Wendell Carter on DK creeping up to a whopping 10.38%. So yeah, nobody really stands out. Is there anybody like coming off the bench for, an unexpected role, a handful of minutes that, could see some additional opportunity and stumble into happenstance, like a kind of known unknown that you're looking for in this game, where you might be grabbing some shares of a low owned value type guy that people might be hunting for, GPP style?
Nah, I don't think so. I mean,
I didn't see
Mo Wagner is always somebody that I like when I feel like he's going to play more than expected, but with the team fully healthy right now, he's probably capped at around, 15 to 18 minutes. And even though Wagner's a good per minute producer, it's tough for him to return value there. And, Terrence Ross is another guy that, like, throughout his career, he has been a classic flamethrower, sixth man off the bench type. And he has just not been that player this season. So I don't think that anybody who's coming off the bench really is going to factor into the equation enough.
Yeah, nobody really, stood out to me outside of, I will take shares of, Wendell Carter, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero. Any of those guys that stumble into a handful of my lineups are fine, but there's just nobody really shining through in the probability. So it's going to be a handful of lineups in tournaments. Looking at the other side of this one, we've got Bradley Beal, we've got Kristaps Porzingis, we've got Kyle Kuzma, kind of the big three, quote unquote, for Washington here. Who stands out to you out of that group? And then are there any other of the, the bits and pieces from Washington that you're going to in this one?
So I think similarly to how I highlighted Fultz on DraftKings, I think Kristaps Porzingis is a pretty nice target here on FanDuel. He's dropped down to 8,900 for him. Somebody who's been priced up closer to 10K at points this season, back-to-back games with at least 45 FanDuel points. The Magic are not a matchup that you need to be afraid of by any stretch of the imagination. So I think Porzingis, definitely has a little bit of upside at this price tag. He can score, he can rebound. He'll have a random game with a handful of block shots too. So I think he is my priority of that trio tonight. Bradley Beal still working his way back from that injury absence. He was limited to roughly 28 and a half minutes in his first game. I still think it's possible that he gets a slight minutes restriction in this spot. He's probably going to play, I would say maybe 32 minutes. So I would rank them Porzingis 1 specifically on FanDuel, Kuzma 2, and then Beal 3.
Yeah, I think that's how I would go. Looking at our numbers, we do have pretty nice probability marks, at least as of the last update. And I'm going to go and grab the other update because I'm done building, at least for this current setup. So in the last update, it does look like Kuzma was drawing a pretty nice leverage score on both sites, which I'm kind of interested in on this slate. 4.5 on DK, 5.2 on FanDuel. So we're drawing him at an 18.7% optimal rate over there. So I am interested in Kuzma. I am interested very much in Porzingis. I get to Porzingis quite often on the FanDuel slates. I like him at center and power forward. He flexes in and out of both spots for a pretty fair price for his 1.26 FanDuel points per minute. So I like all three of those plays. Anybody like a Rui, a Delon Wright, a Monty Morris, any of these guys, Denny, any of the 20 and change minute types really drawing the eye, or are they just kind of bits and pieces for you? Like Delon Wright's coming up 8% optimal with a 5 boom score, 5 leverage score, but not much in terms of a probability to get to a ceiling score. He's got a 4.18 boom score probability on FanDuel with a 21.4 median projection for 4,700 over on DK. He's really just kind of drawing dead. He's sitting at 3.8K, but he's only 3.2% optimal, 2.7% owned. There's really not much on the bone on DK. Anything to like about a guy like Delon Wright on the FanDuel slate?
So yeah, real quick on Kuzma first. I do think that small forward eligibility that he has is kind of carrying him today. You know, like it's small forward is a pretty weak position, right? You've got on FanDuel, the top three guys from a salary perspective are Anthony Edwards, who's questionable, but is probably going to play. I mean, that's kind of been his MO recently. Then Kuzma and then Banchero. So it's a relatively thin position tonight. So I do think Kuzma's a good call out there. Like if he has a good showing, there's a better chance than usual of him being like the top scorer at small forward. So I think that was a good call out. He's definitely somebody that you should be paying attention to. The other guys on the Wizards, none of them are like a priority for me tonight, but I don't mind taking a flyer here and there on a couple of them where they pop up. You know, again, you mentioned there's some decent leverage scores on FanDuel, but none of them grading out as super optimal. You know, everybody after Kuzma is at 8% or lower. So in the optimal lineup rate, I'm fine with taking, you know, a handful of guys like Monty Morris or Delon Wright here and there as they come up, but I'm not going out of my way to get them in there either.
Yeah, it's a lot of guys where I'm looking at them and it's like, okay, you know, I'm getting a smattering of that guy. And all right, well, that's nice. You know, he's also got a positive leverage score for me. He's not going to totally tank my lineup because he's 8% optimal, you know, not much ceiling to speak of, but he'll come in around his median, maybe give me a little bit more than that, maybe squeeze into optimal, and he's positively leveraged. So like little minor bonus points to any of those guys that do come up, but nobody to go out of our way for. Let's take a look. We'll do the next game and then we'll knock some business out because the next one is that Milwaukee Cleveland one that we touched on with the low total, 217.5 in this one. Milwaukee going in as 2.5 point dogs. We know no Giannis, no Middleton, all that story. What's the situation with the Bucks? What are we getting to here? And are we seeing any kind of value emerge from the absences with this team, or is it just, you know, more, is it really suppressed by that total?
So it's definitely an interesting spot because there is going to be some inflated ownership. You know, right now we have Grayson Allen is projected for like 34% ownership on FanDuel. On DraftKings, you've got Grayson projected for much less because he's priced a little bit more reasonably. But overall, like it's a spot where the ownership is going to be spiked, and I'm not sure that you necessarily want to go overboard given that game script that we talked about earlier, right? It's two good defensive teams. Cleveland plays at the slowest pace in the league. It's going to be a bit of a slog. That said, like I'm always down to get some Drew Holiday exposure when Giannis and Middleton are sitting. So far this season, he's got a 32% usage rate with both of those guys off the floor, 1.36 DraftKings points per minute. So I think getting Drew and his ownership is not nearly as high as Grayson's is over there on FanDuel. So I like that as a little bit of a pay up option. I think Bobby Portis is another guy who you can definitely get some exposure to across the industry. But Grayson's the guy to me that, you know, he's coming up so negatively leveraged on FanDuel right now that I'm fine with kind of just saying I'll let the field take their shots with him.
Okay. So he's a player that I'm never all that comfortable with anyway. I mean, 0.76 FanDuel points per minute overall for this season. He can have his moments. Last game out, though, 32.9 minutes gave you 34.5 in terms of FanDuel points. That's about his ceiling, I think, is around that point per minute mark. I'm typically shooting to be around the point per minute in general. I don't love dipping to guys unless they're incredible values. And I think he's just somewhat replaceable at 4,500 shooting guard small forward on this slate. You can go to other spots that grade out fairly similarly. So I think I'm with you. It's not that I'm carving him out of my lineup pool or anything like that. I think just through natural process, I'm going to be a little bit below the field's 33% ownership rate on a guy who's optimal half that. And I think I'm happy about that. I'll take my shots with some of the other guys here.
Yeah, I'm playing him much closer to his optimal rate than his projected ownership. right? Like,
Yeah.
I think anywhere from 15 to, even if you wanted to go to 25%, I think that would be okay. But like a third of your lineups with Grayson Allen feels like it could be asking for trouble against the Cavaliers. And he has been good recently. He's been good in general with Giannis and Middleton off the floor. Like you said, I mean, he's been right at under a fantasy point per minute, just under a fantasy point per minute. But I just think that there are other options on this slate that I feel a little bit more comfortable with.
Yeah, I'm with you. And under on Drew Holiday definitely looks like a nice spot. 1.19 FanDuel points per minute for this season, 1.23 on the DK scale. Obviously gives you great production, and in the situation, there's going to be a tremendous upside there. So I'll get to plenty of shares of Drew here, and he's grading out fantastic on both sides. You mentioned Portis. I like that call out quite a bit. I'm sure chat is probably mentioning Joe Ingles because he comes up quite a bit. He's 4,100 shooting guard, small forward on FanDuel, drawing a 12% optimal rate, slightly negatively leveraged, but that's a spot where I care a lot less about that negative leverage. On DK, 10% optimal, 9% owned, so slightly positive. Again, neither here nor there really as far as the optimal rate, but a nice value at 3,900 shooting guard, small forward. How much is Ingles in your plans here, and what kind of upside do you expect from him?
So Joe Ingles is a weird target on this slate because like he's definitely going to get a boost in minutes tonight. I think he plays probably close to 30 minutes. And if he's knocking down his shot, that's more than enough for Joe Ingles, especially at a sub 4K price tag. But he is not the type of player that I think is going to see a usage bump, right? Like, in fact, when I ran the queue with Giannis and Middleton off the court, Ingles sees a usage decrease in that scenario, right? Like, he's the type of player that benefits from playing alongside good players, right? Who are going to get him open looks. And he'll have less of that, I think, without Giannis on the floor with him. So I think Ingles is totally fine at this price tag. I mean, again, I haven't projected for around 30 minutes, and he's been at 0.81 DraftKings points per minute this season. That makes him a very fine value. But I don't think that he is like a player who's going to pop all of a sudden now because the team is shorthanded.
Okay. So it makes it something more along the lines of a guy that'll take where you get him and not really go out of your way for another one of those type of plays here. So we will take a quick look here. Just getting myself organized. I just pasted the minutes back into my sheet here. So give me half a second to sort this guy, and we'll talk about the Cleveland side of things. Just going back to Grayson Allen real quick. Is there anybody in the universe that you think they say Grayson Allen's my favorite player in the NBA?
Maybe some
friends with that person if they exist.
Some lax bro from Duke. I don't know. That would be my
exactly
guess.
who I was picturing when I asked the follow-up question. Yeah, not somebody I would want to hang out with. Let's talk about the Cleveland side of this one. We've got Evan Mobley up top, looking at the FanDuel and the DK optimal rates around 20% optimal both sites. Slightly overowned, but perfectly viable at power forward and center on both sites. 7K FanDuel, 6.2 on DK. We've got Jared Allen. We've got Darius Garland. We know there's no Donovan Mitchell here. Karis LeVert, Kevin Love. Who do we like from this Cleveland team?
Yeah, I think Cleveland is a nice team here with no Mitchell. Darius Garland's interesting. His price is definitely starting to creep up a little bit. He's up to 8,700 now on DraftKings. He was down at 7,500 just 3 games ago, but totally worth it. 3 straight games with at least 50 DraftKings points. So clearly he can succeed without Donovan Mitchell. I do think it's interesting that he is projected for so much more ownership than Drew Holiday. Like I view both of those players pretty similarly in this matchup. So like I'm giving an edge to Drew just because he's coming in with like half the ownership, maybe even a little bit under half the ownership, but certainly can't deny how good he's been. I think Karis LeVert is my favorite target for Cleveland. He will likely remain in the starting lineup. He's had 38 and 41 DraftKings points the past 2 games, kind of serving as that secondary facilitator, playmaker. I think that, he's got still plenty of upside at his current salary across the industry. No problem at all using LeVert. He's not grading out super well in our tools, pretty negative leverage score, but I just think that he's too cheap right now for the role that he's playing.
Yeah, another one of those pieces that I think we can largely ignore the individual ownership and just get to, as they come up, because there are nice optimal rates on most of those Cleveland guys in our tools today, like you were referring to there. So it's definitely something that I want to take advantage of, not go crazy with it because of that low total. And I don't think it'll come up, all that much more than at worst where the public is on most of those guys. And, at best situationally, I'd like to be around, about the optimal rates on some of those guys. Taking a quick peek over at the news, making sure we've got nothing overly critical. Talking about Rudy Gobert, went through shoot around this morning, is going to go through warmups tonight before they make a decision, saying the same thing about Austin Rivers. Any particular read for you on the Rudy Gobert situation? I think we agree that Edwards most likely going to go. What do you make of Rudy Gobert, and what did you do when you were building lineups for this slate?
Yeah, I mean, especially now that he's gone through warmups or is planning to go through warmups, to me, that's a sign that he's going to more than likely be out there. We'll see. I mean, he actually has to make it through the warmup.
Going to play, to clarify, right?
I'm sorry?
You used the phrase more than likely going to be out there. I just wanted to clear that up for people. More than likely going to play, not the be out might have thrown people there. I probably just threw way more people than you with that phrase. That's perfectly common. Anyway, keep going.
But yes, I think, warm up with the intention to play is kind of a sign for, I think he's going to be in the lineup. So maybe his minutes are monitored, maybe they keep him at, 28, 30, something like that. But certainly it's a downgrade for Houston from a matchup perspective. And it takes away some of the value that we've had with the Timberwolves front court.
Yeah, it would certainly be a major thumbs down for anybody who planned for a Naz Reid type of a situation, which was what I was actually planning to do. But it looks like my last update, I forgot to account for that. So it looks like we're okay here with the lineup builds that we went with, which is good because I do agree. I think that does indicate, probably trending toward him playing. Although one of the weirder NBA players to follow. Let's clean up a little quick business. I think we took care of everything out of that Cleveland game. We've got a few to talk through here, but let's talk about real quick the BetMGM offer here. We've got first bet insurance up to $1,000 and 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum. Pretty awesome offer from our pals over at BetMGM. There's some additional info here that everybody needs to know. So let me give you guys a quick little blurb here. The no-brainers expire in Ohio, Maryland, Illinois, Kansas, and Louisiana on January 20th, which was yesterday. So if you're in those states, sorry, but I'm sure we'll have something again for you guys soon. Follow the links, go to BetMGM anyway, because it's a great site to play, and enjoy Stokastic anyway, because it's a great site. And we'll have some ways to get free NBA content for you guys later on in all those good states. Everybody else, where BetMGM is legal, if you have that legal access to BetMGM, gambling age for your state is probably 21. So make sure that you're over 21 when you gamble. If you or anybody that you know, guys, has a problem with gambling, text or call 1-800-GAMBLER. Now that all those things are out of the way, let's talk about our offer to go over to BetMGM. You can use the promo code Platinum Sub. That's all one word, Platinum Sub. Put it all together. That'll get you access. You can get up to $1,000 first bet insurance on your first wager over there after you make your deposit, and you get 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum by using that code. You have to follow the steps. You go to our site, you create the free membership. A thing will pop up. You click that for BetMGM. It'll take you over to their site. Create the account, make the deposit. Follow the links back, et cetera. You will get your free access to Stokastic. You will get your bet insurance on that first bet. It's returned to you if you lose in site credits. So you get, I believe it's if you go to $1,000, you get 5 different credits for $200 a piece. That's how it was described to me by EMAC. Don't quote me on that. Don't hold me to that by any legal terms here. I think we covered everything that we possibly have to talk about with the BetMGM promo. I'm going to take a breath and also knock out the quick No House Advantage promo because we are at the midpoint of the show, or at least of the first hour pre-lock of the show. We are sticking around until 7:30, gang, to chat and to watch the football game if it's still going on. Still 17-10, Kansas City, 3:30 left in the third. No House Advantage is offering you up to $100 deposit match bonus. They're bringing you the most dynamic fantasy sports platform available today. If you guys aren't catching those afternoon shows, we're doing a lot for No House Advantage during the afternoons. It's usually on like 3 to 4 o'clock in the afternoons. We have an hour of content. It was football in the morning, football first, then basketball. We're doing the basketball shows on through, I believe, the end of the season. But No House offers prop-based contests where you're putting together confidence cards so you can play against the field. We're all ranking our confidence picks with these player props. They leave them wide open so you can use our site where we've got free projections, free lineup builds, all the different tools you need. And you can find these picks that are 99.4% likely to hit. You rank those out in 1 through 10 order. You play against the field. There's a bunch of us out there, and you can win up to $25,000 in cash if you bank one of those GPPs. You can also play against the house. You can win up to 21 times your entry fee if you hit all 5 of your picks in a versus the house contest. That one, you don't have to worry about guys like Alex, people playing with optimizers and all our tools out there. You're just making your 5 picks against the house in that side, in that one. So pretty cool way to play. You get a first match deposit bonus over there as well. $50 over there. Actually, no, excuse me. That's up to $100 now. I got to update this little read here. We're at $100 now, free money. So that's a great way to get started too. I love taking advantage of things like that, Matt. When you start out in a new site, there's nothing better than just instantly doubling up on your $100 deposit and starting out with $200. And a site that has a lot of overlay. Do you like to chase overlay? Does it make sense as a gambler?
I mean, it's the easiest way to win, to chase overlay and deposit bonuses. And if you travel, I don't know if any of the listeners out there travel, but a lot of the sports books are state by state. So if you're ever in a different location, try to grab a deposit bonus when you're outside where you normally are. So there's a lot of money out there if you're willing to put the effort in to go sign up.
Yep, there absolutely is. And that's something I brought it up once, and it's something I always try and remember to mention. I'm glad you brought it up because I had totally forgotten. That's a great call out. When you go to one of these states where gambling's legal, if it's not in your state, take our, you don't have to take anything with you. Log into our site from there. We've got all these promos laid out for you. You can just click through, take advantage of all of these offers while you're there. And then you've got that money up and running. You've got your free access to our site up and running. And then you go back home, and at worst, you've got a little money in your pocket, and you've got access to Stokastic for the next 2 months, and you can make some money playing DFS in your state. So win across the board. Let's get back into this slate. We got about a half hour before lock, 27-ish minutes, something like that. We'll jump into chat. I'll take a peek at news. We'll talk about any questions that come up. But let's take a quick look at this Hornets Atlanta game. Charlotte coming in last update I had 7.5 point dogs, 234.5 point total. Any news, anything change with this one from the start of the show? And then what do you make of the Hornets side of this one?
I haven't seen any updates. I mean, the things that we're looking for, really, I mean, the only player that is still not confirmed is Cody Martin, and he's doubtful. So I would say almost certainly he's not going to play. LaMelo is out. Gordon Hayward is in. So I do think Gordon Hayward coming back, he will definitely help take on some of that facilitator role, with LaMelo leaving the lineup. But it's a good team and a good DFS team. I think this is a good DFS matchup. This is the first game.
Sorry to cut you off. We actually just got it. Just caught that in the news channel. Cody Martin is ruled out. So we did just get that piece. So
beautiful.
Scratch out that major piece of your plans, everybody.
I think that this is a game that this is the first one where it's like, okay, let's get to work. Let's load up a little bit here. For the Hornets, my favorite option is plums. I feel it deep in my plums. I don't know what this guy has to do to get some respect from the DFS sites here. All the guy does is go out and smash, and his salary it barely budges. 6,500 on DraftKings, 7,300 on FanDuel is a bit more reasonable, but I would still argue that it's too low. The guy has averaged over 1.2 fantasy points per minute over the past month. And now he's taking on an Atlanta team that is bottom 5 in the league in points in the paint allowed and team rebound rate. So I think Plumlee set up for another big game here. Dennis Smith Jr. is going to be a popular option. Even though he's coming off the bench. I'm sorry?
I gave a shiver.
I see what you're saying.
That reaction to DSJ's name whenever he comes up.
He has burned a lot of people, but He's probably penciled in for close to 30 minutes coming off the bench. He's at 4K on DraftKings. That's just a ridiculously cheap price tag. It's kind of hard to avoid him. I think Terry Rozier is totally reasonable to pay up for him. I think that PJ Washington is very acceptable at his price tag. And if you're looking for a pure punt play, I think Mark Williams is fine too. He's averaging just as good as Mason Plumlee, 1.25 DraftKings points per minute this season. He's probably going to play, 16, 18 minutes or so. And it's the same exact matchup, right? It's the same exact Hawks front court that has kind of been demolished by opposing big men all season. So I don't hate him if you're looking for, a low owned dart in a stars and scrubs build.
Yeah, and for me, that's just taking a look at the pricing across sites. That's a DK only play. 3,100 over on DK.
Yes.
Center, 4,400 center, only one bullet at the center spot. We're not going there on FanDuel, but I do like a lot of those pieces that you're calling out. Even with lower optimal rates, pretty much across the board than we're seeing on some of these guys on DK. I do think, as uncomfortable as it is, even at 5,700 on FanDuel, the way he's grading out in our tools, I do think DSJ's still got viability there. I like that he's like kind of even with the field in terms of his optimal rate and not showing ridiculous upside. Like across town on DK, 44% optimal, 50% owned, 57% boom score probability. You've almost got to go there. I think he's avoidable on FanDuel. I think you can at least undercut the field on FanDuel, which I'm happy about, but I will be going there. PJ, Terry Rozier, like you said, I totally agree with. And then Plumlee, I do think is very interesting. 1.18 FanDuel points per minute production over the last 3 games, 1.11 for the season, 66.5% true shooting, just a 14.8% usage rate, but a guy who just produces every time he's out there. So I actually like that he's at 7,300 on the FanDuel slate because I think it makes him in that price tier where the public's not going to really go to him. I think a lot of people are going to deliberately not click his name at that price. And he's still coming up around 10% optimal. That's a reasonable tournament dart, 16% likely to hit a ceiling score for me. I can take that upside from a guy who's got a 35 median projection. I kind of like the Plumlee call out there. So I'll be chasing that one a little bit. Anything else from the value range? I think you covered everybody. It's a short rotation anyway. Actually, let's skip that follow-up. Let's look at Atlanta. You'd break down Atlanta starting with, I guess, Trae Young up at the top, looking pretty interesting. And then we've got John Collins, DeJounte Murray, a lot of pieces on Atlanta, at least a few of them looking interesting. So break them down. I'll go question hunting in chat.
So yeah, Atlanta, on paper, it's a phenomenal spot for them. They were second on the slate in implied team total, so certainly have plenty of scoring potential. The one thing I will say is that Charlotte has played noticeably slower with LaMelo out of the lineup this season. So it might not be a total, run and gun bonanza with him sidelined, but still Atlanta is a super reasonable team to get behind. Trae Young is another guy who has been priced down. He was, up over 10K plenty this season. Now he's down to 9,300 on DraftKings. So definitely some buy low viability there. I don't know if I like him as much as, the Drew Holidays of the world, but I think if you're paying up, definitely can get behind that. DeJounte coming off of a huge game in his last outing, 62 DraftKings points. I think I would prefer to save the $1,000 with him compared to Trae Young. But I actually think the mid-range guys are the most appealing for Atlanta tonight. Clint Capella, DeAndre Hunter, John Collins. I think all 3 of those guys are underpriced here, specifically on DraftKings. Capella's 5,500. Going to play limited minutes, but with the way that guy produces on a per minute basis, he only really needs 24, 25 minutes to return value at 5,500.
Yeah, 55 over on DK. Very nice price. He's coming up 7-ish% optimal. Owned in that territory, perfectly fine to use him around the field, a little bit over, a little bit under, whatever you're feeling, whatever comes up for you. Different story on FanDuel at 62, I think. He's still got a smidge of viability, but it's a little bit thinner with that 24-minute projection on him. As far as you mentioned Hunter, what about a guy like AJ Griffin, somebody like that, with no Bogdan out there? Is he guys coming up for you a little bit, or is he, seeing any value? We've got him projected out to 22 minutes, 4,000 on FanDuel, 3,300 on DK. Any
Yeah,
love
it would
there?
be a DK only play, but I can't get behind it. I don't think he just hasn't been good enough on a per minute basis, and I don't think he's going to see a big enough spike in minutes. Right, like if I felt like he was going to play 30 minutes, then it would be a different story. I have him projected for 22 minutes, and that's not really enough for him to be a factor as a guy who's averaged 0.65 DraftKings points per minute over the past month.
Yep, not a ton of permanent production there and not enough time to do it. And yeah, like you said, in our tools, 22 minutes showing a 0.8 optimal percentage so far on the FanDuel slate, 1.4 on DK. So even at 3,300, just not really a lot there. And those are the kind of plays that, those can tank your lineups. Those are the kind of plays that a lot of people, I think, in the public will say, well, this guy's going to get some time. He's super cheap. He could. And I've been saying it a lot lately on shows. We want to chase probability. We don't want to chase possibility. We want, a meteor could hit the stadium tonight, the arena tonight. It could happen. It's not going to. We want to chase probability. We don't want to chase.
Better not now, Terry.
Yeah, now, hey, prognosticator of prognosticators, if that one comes true. We had a couple of questions in the chat here, both about cash games. Michael McKinney gave us $2 and he asked for 5 must plays for cash on FanDuel. Justin Cravens gave us $5, outbid the other guy here, and asked for DK cash game locks that he needs to build around. So can you give us a core for cash games that maybe works across both sites? Like, who are the super optimal, really relevant, maybe situationally created, whatever type guys today?
So I do think it matters which site you're playing on. I'll just give a quick rundown. I think that for me, my 5 favorite cash game plays on FanDuel, I'm going to start with Saban Lee at 4,500 on FanDuel. I think he's the best value play on this slate. Grayson Allen is another really strong value play for cash games. Again, I feel he might be over-owned in tournaments, but he's the type of player that I'm going to build around in cash games. At center, I think that DeAndre Ayton, if he's in the lineup, is great. And if not, Alperen Şengün is $200 more expensive. Both guys, I think, are awesome plays tonight. Karis LeVert, Mikal Bridges. So a lot of Phoenix.
A lot of pieces.
Given that matchup versus the Pacers and, being so depleted injury wise, I think Phoenix is like the team to target, but I'm going with a little bit of a balanced approach. Kind of, staying in that 8K range for some of my top plays. But I think Phoenix is the team to look to, as a priority.
Yep, absolutely. Totally with you on that Saban Lee piece. And we'll get into that in just a second in a little bit more detail. But he of the 20-day contract now, just looking dynamite in terms of the optimal rate. We had a little bit of a scare with him. The guys on the morning show talked about it and, didn't play most of the first quarter last time out. We saw Damian Lee get the start. We saw Dwayne Washington check in. At one point, somebody in chat said, is Saban Lee ever going to play? I said he's already in. Damian Lee had actually checked out of the game, then checked back in before Saban Lee got on the court. And I had mistaken my lees, but we will have a lot of action from Saban Lee. He ended up playing 29.5 minutes in that game, put up a 29.6 on FanDuel, not a massive number, but probably enough to deliver, at least around value. And there is ceiling there. We've seen it 0.93 FanDuel points per minute. So I do agree there's, Saban Lee for cash games is a virtual lock. And then for tournaments, I think is super viable here. Anything pop up for you injury wise? Anything you've seen? And thank you guys for the super chats out there. Hit the thumbs up. That helps us a lot. All that fun stuff. Anything else injury wise hit your radar in the last few minutes?
No, I think unfortunately the only things we're really waiting for at this point are the late games. So yeah. I would be surprised if we got another update here before we got to the end of the show, or at least before the initial lineup lock. But I will add that for DraftKings, if you're looking for cash game plays, I think Dennis Smith Jr. enters that tier at 4K. And I think that Plums enters that tier at 6,500.
Love it. Totally agree with you on those calls. That's and that fills out the rest of the card there, I think, on DK for the guy who asked. Again, guys, thanks for the super chats out there. Real quick, since you guys are dropping a couple of bucks, let's throw something back your way. 5 days free access to Stokastic Plus NBA. Gives you access to all the 1v1 tools. It gives you access to the lineup generator, top stacks tool, the boom bust, the ownership projections, the projections themselves, our Discord, which is key for finding out all the breaking news, talking to all the experts, ping everybody, annoy them with pings in the middle of the night so that they can wake up in the morning and see just endless questions and start their day with coffee and tons of questions to answer. Go ahead. That's what the Discord's there for, guys. Gets you into the community with this 5-day free trial, gets you to test drive all these different things for free. So check it out. I'm sure there's a link in the description there below. Mikey probably took care of it for us. He's probably dropping it in the chat too, because that's just the kind of guy that Mikey is. Producer extraordinaire. Let's talk about Houston Rockets, Minnesota Timberwolves. We referred to the Gobert situation. We don't have any update on it yet, but Rockets going in 8.5-point dogs, 238 total, about 14 and change minutes to lock. So we'll talk through these 3 games. If anything pops up, overview style, we'll do it.
Yeah, I'll try to pick up the pace here a little bit.
Yeah, no
I think for Houston, Şengün is clearly their top guy. He has taken on a little bit more of a distributor role since Kevin Porter Jr. went down with an injury. We know how good he is already in terms of points and rebounds. So like he is just a really excellent per minute producer at the moment with this current roster construction. And I really like taking a shot on some of these wings with Jabari Smith joining him on the sidelines today. I think that a lot of these guys could be a little bit under-owned compared to their upside. I am a huge Jae'Sean Tate guy, probably the only one, to be honest, but I like his game. I think he has a very fantasy-friendly game when he's playing well. He's at 0.85 DraftKings points per minute this season, and I think he could realistically approach 30 minutes tonight. He is showing up with a really nice leverage score in the tools. I think he is a great option. I think Eric Gordon is a great option. I think Kenyon Martin Jr. makes sense. Tari Eason makes sense. So I like a lot of this Rockets value that we have tonight.
Okay. Always fun when the Rockets are on the board. There's usually big totals, pretty much a lack of defense, a lot of offensive upside in this game. It does look like they're shining through on both sides. You mentioned Jae'Sean Tate. I love the call out there. Positively leveraged on FanDuel as well. 31% optimal on FanDuel. You're getting him 4,500 small forward, power forward over there. You're getting him shooting guard, small forward on DK for 42. It comes up 20% optimal. So his leverage score is a little bit better, but his optimal rate's trailing a little bit on site to site. Optimal score trails a little bit on the DK side of that board. But yeah, number of pieces, at least, mid-teens to 20% optimal on both sites. There's a lot to like, and they're not all under-owned, but they're at worst appropriately owned. So I think there's a lot of pieces from the Rockets that I'll be getting to. What about the other side? Knowing that we'll probably have to consider Gobert as a go at this point, and as things currently stand, he's reasonably optimal at 13% on FanDuel. He's where is he on DK? 6.7 on DK. I think he's semi-avoidable on DK in terms of his optimal rate. But what that's, that's 13%. I'm sorry. The 6.7 is his ownership. So that does create the situation I was going to talk about. Leverage. You're getting leverage from Rudy Gobert if you go to him here. Can you plan on building him into some lineups here and then adapting if he ends up being out?
Yeah, I think it's easier, honestly, to probably build without him and then adapt if he's in. Okay. If you play guys like Şengün and Ayton in the next game of the night, like you can pretty easily pivot down a little bit to Karl Anthony Towns if he is in. I'm sorry, Karl Anthony Towns will not be in.
Do not pivot to Karl Anthony Towns.
If Rudy Gobert is in. You can pivot down pretty easily.
I was watching the football game and that one caught my attention.
I caught it myself at least.
Into the end zone, by the way.
I caught it myself at least. But
well,
yeah, I think Gobert, if he does play, is somebody that you have to have at least a little bit of tournament exposure to, right? Like
yeah,
that kind of situation is just, it screams that he's going to be under-owned. He's 7K. It's a smash spot against Houston. Like, there are a lot of factors that are working in his favor if he does suit up. So I think you would want to get some shares of him there. Other than that, Anthony Edwards, totally reasonable today, as long as he's in the lineup. I mean, again, I'm about 95% sure he's going to play. He's been questionable for like 2 weeks and seems to always be in the lineup. And not only that, he's playing a ton, right? He's coming off nearly 40 minutes in his last game. So 40 minutes against Houston with no Karl Anthony Towns, like at a weak small forward position, it's very hard for me to get away from Anthony Edwards tonight.
Yeah, I agree with that. I love the upside if he's there. He's a guy that I tend to get to a lot when he is playing. And like I said, been toughing it out. 2 follow-ups on him. What's the downstream impact if he ends up not playing? And do you see, is there, and knowing obviously it's not a positional thing, but is there any thought to Gobert yes equals Edwards no? Like if they push Gobert into the lineup tonight, maybe that's the day that they give Edwards off. Any thought to that? Again, knowing they're not the same position by any means.
Yeah, I would say they're pretty independent of each other. Yeah. I think that Russell, this is just a procedural thing at this point. I don't think there's any real chance of him not playing. I think the guy who would see the biggest loss if Gobert is back is Kyle Anderson, right? Kyle Anderson has kind of smashed now in 3 straight games, 3 straight with at least 49.5 DraftKings points, but double-digit rebounds in each game. I think that he clearly loses some rebounding ability if Gobert returns. So I still think you can use him at 5,900, certainly on DraftKings, but I would not expect another, near 50 burger from him tonight. If Edwards does somehow get ruled out, then this team becomes just an absolute smash, right? A shorthanded team against the Rockets, like sign me up for that every day of the week. D'Angelo Russell, absolutely great play. Jalen Noel off the bench, sure. Taurean Prince, who has given us some decent minutes of late. I think he becomes viable again at 3,700. So if for some reason Edwards is out, which again, I'm not expecting, then get as many Timberwolves as possible into your lineups.
Yep, absolutely. D'Lo becomes one of my top priorities there. I think there's major upside, but yeah, I like a lot of those pieces that you named. Let's jump, just in the interest of time, to the next game. Pacers going into Phoenix. We've talked a little bit tangentially about the value on the Phoenix side of this one, but real quick, what are we seeing from the Pacers? 4-point dogs, 229-point total. Knowing we've still got an 8 in question mark, but what are we seeing on the Indy side of this one to start us off?
I hate this team with a burning passion.
Same.
I don't know why they refuse to play Miles Turner like 30 minutes consistently, but he's really the guy for me that I'm always going to just have some flyers on, right? Because on the random nights when he does pop off for 30 plus minutes, he can get us 50 DraftKings points at 7,300. So he's always somebody to consider in tournaments. Other than that, nobody on this team, well, including Turner, nobody on this team has an optimal rate above 9% on DraftKings. I don't think you really need a ton here. The exception would be if Andrew Nembhard is ruled out. He's questionable, I believe, at the moment. If he's out, then all of a sudden the team is down him and Tyrese Halliburton. Now you can potentially look to TJ McConnell as a priority play, I think.
Yeah, that would create a situation where, all right, yeah, now I'm trying to figure out how to get some TJ McConnell into my lineups, and then seeing what the downstream impact from that would be, considering the amount of like Saban Lee that I've got in my life at this point, and some of these other pieces. I don't know that there's even going to be the value. Like it might just be a situation where, all right, you've switched to acquire 3 more points, and now your lineups are a little bit more optimal maybe, but you're leaving a bunch of money on the table, or they're about the same. So I don't know if there's going to be upside created by that, depending on, what your point per dollar looks like when you get to that spot. But we'll worry about that bridge if we get to it. Let's look at the Phoenix side with
Speaking of bridge, that's a wonderful transition.
Oh, look at that.
To my man, Mikal Bridges.
You should be hosting this show. What a much better transition than the one I was in the middle of. Speaking of bridges, let's talk about our guy, Mikal. Let's also talk about his teammate, Saban Lee. Throw him into the mix because I guess he's going to be a little bit relevant in about half the lineups across the industry tonight.
Yeah, Saban Lee, tough to avoid at his current salary. I haven't projected for less than he played in the last game. I haven't projected for about 24, 25 minutes right now. And even with a conservative projection, he's still grading out as one of the best values on the slate. So I think that makes him just very tough to avoid. Again, like he's a chalk play that's showing up with a positive leverage score. And those types of plays are the type that I would qualify as good chalk, right? I think Bridges fits the same description. The usage has been significantly increased the past 2 nights. We know he's going to play roughly 40 minutes a game. And against the Pacers, he can do some serious damage with that much playing time and an increased usage rate. I love DeAndre Ayton if he's able to go in this spot. And I will have some Damian Lee, although he is the value play that I am a little bit more scared of. I think his minutes are a little bit more secure than Saban Lee's, but he's not nearly the same caliber of per minute producer.
Yeah, and it's a situation where I think like the other night, if we see Damian Lee in the starting lineup, Saban Lee coming off the bench, I don't think it's any reason for anybody to panic, punch the eject button on Saban Lee shares. Like that's kind of what we're expecting again here, I think, right? Even you said you're expecting, fewer minutes, so no reason to panic there if that's the starting lineup again, right?
Yep. Nope. I honestly would prefer it because hopefully it would drive Saban's ownership down a little bit.
Yeah, that would be pretty ideal considering the massive amount of shares that I'm clicking save on right now. So looks like those are in. So we'll worry about any changes later, and there will probably be some. Anything else to call out from the Phoenix side? I'm with you on Saban Lee and Mikal Bridges at least. You mentioned Lee. Any of the, let's say we get no Ayton. Do Bismack Biyombo and Jack Landale become part of our lives? What happens there?
Yeah, probably. Both guys are priced at the minimum, the other min priced or close to min price center on DraftKings I talked about was Mark Williams. Like I would feel better about 24-ish minutes Jock Landale than I do right now about Mark Williams. So I think that would be worth adjusting to if that news happens, but I'm expecting Ayton to play. He played in their last game and he played pretty well, had a 33% usage rate. So I think Ayton will ultimately be out there.
Okay, so let's talk from that center to we'll pivot over to the Joel Embiid situation, because I think that's the key talking point from the Philly game. And if he doesn't go, does any center value emerge there that you like? Kind of same question as far as Biyombo. So what do you expect from Embiid? And then what's the downstream impact if he doesn't go?
Yeah, it's an interesting situation because when Embiid first got hurt, they were trying to make it work with PJ Tucker at center. And PJ Tucker could play 65 minutes a night, and I don't think I would want to play him at this point. So if
I think math would hold up on that.
If Embiid is out and it's PJ Tucker starting, then no, there's really no downstream impact. But if it's Montrezl Harrell, then I think you have to at least think about it. Trez is a guy who's at like a point per minute, fantasy point per minute. Mm-hmm. So I think that would become, somebody to consider if he does move into the starting lineup.
Okay. Yeah. And definitely the more interesting point per minute player with Trez there. Does a guy like Paul Reed become part of our lives at 3,000 on DK? He's 41 on FanDuel, so I think he'd still stay fairly relevant unless we got like Paul Reed starting. Any love there?
Yeah, I would probably pass on Paul Reed just because even that first stretch where Embiid was out, they were kind of hesitant to play him very much. Paul Reed is a good per minute type of guy, but he would probably, I think, be looking at 10 minutes or so in that situation, and you have to be really good to give us a ceiling game in 10 minutes. I don't even know if Embiid could do that.
At that price, he probably could, but
yeah, that's true.
Not at his current price. So we're coming up on lock, gang. We'll talk about the Sacto side of this one. There's no crazy news from that one. Kind of the obvious pieces are the obvious pieces. Darren Fox, Domantas Sabonis, Kevin Huerter is on the board a little bit. Keegan Murray's on the board a little bit, but nothing overly pressing there. We do have James Harden's also questionable here for Philly. So let's chew up our time talking about that. What's the impact on the Melton Maxey type situation there from him? And then in the situation where they go no Embiid, but yes Harden, and then going with that like Tucker lineup, what's the impact on the Maxey Melton situation there? Because those minutes have been bouncing around a little bit in that situation.
Yeah, I feel like I'm back in school. It's like if X, then Y.
Yeah, like a little complex.
If Embiid is out and Harden is in, then I don't know if there's enough of a bump for Melton or Maxey. Like those guys will play. and they are decent basketball players, but I think that the ideal scenario is that both of the Philly big men, the Philly stars are out. That's when I would really be looking to get to those guys heavily. Tobias Harris as well. Tobias Harris always seems to be the forgotten man, but when we saw them playing without Harden and Embiid earlier this year, Harris was a pretty nice DFS option. He's only 6,200. So if both guys are out, that's when we can really start to dig into the Philly side. Unfortunately, it's the last game of the night, so not sure how much lineup flexibility we're going to have, but if you build one of those Philly stars into your lineup, I would try to maybe consider multiple pieces in this game, so it gives you maximum wiggle room.
Yeah, and at least you do have center guard for stars back and forth. It's not that the pricing lines up directly, right, but you can kind of maybe pivot some things around depending on what kind of a situation that we get. I breezed through the Sacramento side of things, and we are on the other side of lock, but obviously last game of the night people can still make changes here. What are you seeing from Sacramento? We're going till 7:30 here, gang, brought to you by No House Advantage. So what are you seeing from the Sacramento side? And then we'll go back to the top and start taking a look at what's going on.
Yeah, so for me, it's Keegan Murray. That's the play for Sacramento today. He's gotten now 37 minutes in back-to-back games. He erupted in his last game for 51. I would not expect a repeat performance, but if he's going to continue to play, mid to upper 30 minutes, 4,300 for him on DraftKings is just comically low, right? Like, I think he could be a 30 fantasy point per game type of player with that kind of workload. So he's somebody, he's going to be popular-ish, right? 12.5% projected ownership on DraftKings, but that still, I think, is low enough that I'm going to be over the field on that pretty comfortably.
Yeah, it's a spot I like over on FanDuel, actually. 5,200 multi-forward eligible, only 8% owned, 7% optimal, not smashing through the probability numbers, but certainly on the board, and not a guy that the field is chasing by any means. So, kind of sneaky on both sides. I do like the upside there. How much Sabonis, how much Fox do you have in your lineups that you've hopefully gotten entered by now?
It's not as much as I would usually have. I'm a big Sabonis guy. The whole diet Jokic thing, I think, has gotten a little bit blown out of proportion at this point. At this point, Jokic, nobody should be compared to Jokic, even as a diet version. That's how good that guy is playing right now. But Sabonis can clearly do a little bit of everything, right? And he's been at roughly 1.5 DraftKings points per minute over the past month. The problem is that if Embiid is in, it's just a brutal matchup. So I ended up with less of him than I normally do, just because of the matchup concerns and the fact that there were other, priority centers for me tonight. De'Aaron Fox, again, similar situation. I just felt there were better point guards to target. So Sacramento ended up being a team that, despite them being such a fantasy friendly team overall, I just didn't end up with a ton of exposure to outside of Keegan Murray.
Okay. Would you accept something along the lines of Luka is a little Jokic or Jokic is a big Luka?
No, at least I don't accept
No,
that.
Not even that. Wow. Okay. All right. High level praise for Nikola Jokic.
How about
I don't necessarily disagree.
I love Luka. Can the guy play 70 games before we start calling him Nikola Jokic?
All right. Fair. I think he is number 2 in the MVP chase right now, right?
Yes.
As far as the odds go. Yeah.
Luka's great. Luka is fantastic, but he's not Nikola Jokic. He's just not.
Yeah. If you are, nobody is really right now. I mean, where does he fall in if you put him in different eras in your mind, as far as the NBA goes? Where does he fall in? Drop him into the 90s and the low scoring, high defensive intensity type of situation. Does he find his way, or is he a different basketball player?
So first off, are we just putting him in a time machine and he's going to bring his same exact game with him to the 90s? Because I think that guys are going to look at him like he's an alien.
Brains if he did.
They're going to be like, why is this guy shooting from so far? He's 7 feet tall.
Get inside, son. What are you doing?
I think
he'd be on the bench because they couldn't keep him away from the 3-point line.
Right. I think like if the comparison is like he grows up in that era and he's in the NBA in the 90s.
Same body and skill set, but grew up in that era.
He probably ends up as like an Arvydas Sabonis type where, he's a very skilled big man, but I don't think any team uses him properly enough to like get the most out of his skill set.
Yeah. The league's not finding that their way to him yet. Basically.
Correct.
So, they're not finding this optimal brand of basketball that we play now. And he's not going to be in there bodying up Shaq.
Right.
It's a little bit different. So, yeah, it's amazing how much just, watching the game over that time period, how much it's changed since back in those 72 to 69, Miami Heat over New York Knicks playoff games that we used to get back in the day. So, but this conversation and more talk between now and 7:30 brought to you by No House Advantage, guys, our great pals over there. Go check out their pick'em contests. You can play against the field. You can play against the house. You can win a ton of money either way. We've got free projections at the site for No House Advantage. You can sort by win rates on the overs and on the unders to fill out your lineup cards. It makes it really, really easy and straightforward to, at the worst, build really optimal, really premium lineups at that site. Maybe a tie with some people at the top. The scoring, basically, if you hit your 10, you get 10 points. If you hit your 9, you get 9 points. So sometimes a lot of people picking different things, the scoring will work out where people are chopping their probability, but you still want to be a part of that. So you want to be taking advantage of the projections. You want to be taking advantage of these optimal lineups that we're building out for you. If you want to maybe avoid some of those chop situations, scroll back a couple pages in the optimal lineups page, grab some of those. They're pre-built for you. Best lineups you can get with the top picks using the top projections in the industry. That's all over at No House Advantage. They've got excellent contests for every different sport. Check them out. 25 grand up top for their versus the field contests. 21 times your entry fee if you beat the house in the 5x5 pick versus the house contest. Easy for me to say. A lot of stuff going on over there, and the $100 deposit match bonus and overlay all the time. Tons and tons of fun at No House Advantage. Matt, anything pop up in terms of news? We'll take a peek to see if there's any questions. Tall Tale wants to know, should we thumbs up any Sixers players? This is, I guess, for it might have come in before lock, but as we're doing rebuilds and swap demizing, are you doing anything with the Sixers cast of supporting characters in case Embiid and Harden are out to try and grab some shares of that game? Like, what are you doing there?
I'm kind of just letting it happen naturally. As of right now, I have both players projected as in, and I don't have anybody on Philly grading out as a great play. So they're not a team that I want to be left holding the bag on, so to speak. Right. Like, and if they end up ruling out both players and I miss out on that value, then oh well. But I'll definitely, hopefully we should have some news before 9:00. And that's when Phoenix and Indiana tips off. Mm-hmm. And, I have plenty of Phoenix guys already built into my lineup, so I can kind of rework some of that exposure. But I don't want to prepare for them to be out and then be left with all these useless 76ers shares if both guys end up playing.
Yeah, the last thing you want to be in that kind of a situation is just way overweight to like a Tobias Harris with both those guys going and just, no real general upside beyond what he normally gives you. I don't see the viability in that spot. So I agree with you. And nothing really to plan for there till maybe we get a little bit more news. We'll see what breaks in the next little bit. Looks like we got a super chat from Justin Crees sending us $2. Best wishes to 2023 for both of us. Slug.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. We appreciate that, Justin. Thanks for the super chat, buddy. And best wishes back to you for 2023. Do you know what Slug Life is in reference to?
No.
2 G's? Neither do I. I hope it's something cool. Justin, Slug Life, back to you, buddy. Best wishes for
Slug Life.
Slug Life. There was another one in here that I wanted to hit on. Jacob Vittner. Terry, why at Digital B21 as a handle? There's got to be a good story. There is not. There's a good song. The band Bad Religion, punk rock band, had a song, 21st Century Digital Boy, and Digital B21 Twitter handle is available. That's the story.
Were you late to the Twitter game?
No, I was in there fairly early. I was like, I registered a handle, didn't really use it, and then like toward the end of my previous job, when I was just fucking around most of the time and not doing work, like I would be looking for things to do. So I got into the telling jokes on there, like the, hashtag this comedy games and shit like that. And that show at midnight that was on Comedy Central.
Yes.
And then once it got all shitty with the, I won't say which side or both sides, 2016 through 2020 current ish time, I kind of have been off of Twitter. So not much going on for me on Twitter. What about, are you a big Twitter guy?
I mean, I kind of have to be just for this type of stuff,
Sure.
but as far as like my own personal tweets, no, I very rarely do that, to the chagrin of some of the people that employ me. Like they want me, they want me pumping more stuff out than I do, but it's just not in my mentality, my DNA or whatever. Like I feel like I shouldn't be out there pumping my own stuff that I've written for wherever. Like it's just, nah, I just don't like to do it.
Yeah, I've never been one to, like with screenshots when I win and stuff. Like Emacs sends out more of my screenshots than I do. Like I've never been one to, pound my chest. I'll send links. If I write something for Stokastic, I'll send the link out. I never remember to do it for shows. I'm like 25% success rate to do it when I do write articles. But I'm with you. I'm not a big self promoter, but a lot of the guys at the site do have great follows on Twitter. Like, some of these guys are Greg and Adam, I think, are legitimate.
Greg's funny for sure.
There's some good follows out there, but yeah, that was the story. Jacob Vintner, thank you for the question. Check out Bad Religion, great punk rock band from basically as old as I am. Founded in, I believe, 1979 in California. Ever listen to Bad Religion, Matt?
I mean, I probably would have heard it, but it doesn't come up by just by name.
Yeah, that's fine. I see how it is. That's fine. I don't like any of your music either.
You probably don't.
Probably. If you listen, what do you listen to? I do too. I listen to a pretty broad spectrum, but what do you listen to?
I listen to everything from like rap, hip hop. I'll go to jazz from time to time.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar, but some of the people from when I was doing DraftKings sims, they started calling me Big Saxy because I was a saxophone player for many years. So
okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I still listen to some jazz music. I like, that kind of stuff when I'm writing for sure, just to have some background noise.
Sure.
But like Red Hot Chili Peppers, stuff like that is in my mix too.
So some 90s alternatives thrown in there. Some jazz.
Yeah.
All right. That's a pretty broad spectrum. That's some eclectic taste. I can get into a lot of that. I'm just not like, it makes me sound so old, but like, I feel like we spent, like 1950 to like 2000 perfecting rock music. I was saying this to my friend, and then we were just like, okay, rock music was good, but now we're going to move on to like pop and whatever, like is, it's just not for me. I miss good old fashioned rock. But anyway, that's not what anybody came to talk about today in the chat, or maybe it is. Drop some of your music favorites into chat. Let's see. Oh, Justin's back. Justin gave us another $2 saying Louisville Slugger LaMarca. Slug Life.
Yes. Okay. So it's Justin Cravens. I remember him. He's another one who came over, or, I associated with him during the DraftKings streams back in the day. And he works for Louisville Slugger.
Oh, so, right on.
Yes.
Not bad.
Oh, we got one in the background.
We got a fine Louisville Slugger product right there.
There it is.
This is old. The old personalized model.
Yeah, T McB.
Gift from my aunt Pat back in 1990, when the bands we were just talking about were still popular, Chili Peppers and stuff. Anthony Davis also just dropped us $25. Longtime regular viewer of the show. Anthony Davis wants to show some love. Good luck tonight. We appreciate you, buddy. We appreciate you too, Justin. Thank you, guys. Good luck back to you folks out there. Let's see. Anything jumping out to you? Let's take a look. Is there anything for No House that we can chat about here real quick? Let me pull up No House on the versus the house contests here. Let me throw a couple of these props at you. See if we've got anything interesting here. First, the house props. In the Houston, Minnesota game, Mr. Alperen Şengün, we talked about him being a pretty interesting DFS play on a 5.5 line on his assists. What do you think of Şengün here over at No House in the versus the house contest?
Yeah, I like that. I will happily take an over on 5.5 for Şengün. You look at the last 5 games now, he's had at least 6 dimes. And, in 3 of those games, he played less than 30 minutes, right? The last 2 games, he's played 37 and 39 minutes. So I think for sure Şengün can get back to 6 assists here, right? Like should be an up tempo game too against the Timberwolves. Lots of possessions. Mm-hmm. You factor in a tougher than average matchup against Rudy Gobert. He might be looking to pass a little bit more than usual. So I think that there's a lot of reasons to back that number.
Yeah, I could see some upside there in our projections. Looking at it, it actually looks a little more fragile than that. I was actually leaning your way. We've got it projected as 4.5, so a 70% are on the under. But I think based on everything that you were saying, and the way that I was leaning on it, just thinking it through, I'm kind of with you there on a minutes uptick. He's already a guy with an 18% assist rate. He's putting up 3.2 on the average in just 27.4 minutes a night, and we're projecting him out to 32.4 minutes. In a per 36 cents, it's 4.2. So maybe it does leave him a little bit shy, but I feel a little bit more comfortable than that one, than our projection does on that one. So I don't typically go out on a limb against the number, but
that's definitely like the
minutes based thing, I think probably. Right?
Yeah. Versus the metrics probably do support this being an under more than an over, but I'm going off of recent production and the whole Kevin Porter Jr. thing. Like, I just think they're funneling a lot of more of their offense through him. So,
yep. I think that makes a ton of sense. Looking at another one, 67% to come through on the under. And I think it's an interesting one. Another one that's kind of counterintuitive, I think, a little bit. Karis LeVert, just a 2 line and we're projecting it as 67% to go under. What do we think of Karis LeVert there on the 3-pointers?
What was the number?
Just 2. But we've got it at 67% likely to go under. It's our third highest on the board here.
Yeah, I don't think of LeVert as like a 3-point marksman by any stretch. He's been pretty good from that area this year, 37.3%, but he's roughly 33% for his career, 34%. So I don't think that that's necessarily all that aggressive to take an under, right? He's averaging 1.6 3-pointers per game in 31 minutes per game. So that seems like a pretty strong under candidate. He, has been hot the last 2 nights with 4 threes and 5 threes, but prior to that, he had 5 straight with 1 or less. So could be a good time to sell high on him.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that's always interesting about looking at some of these player props, situational stuff, recent performance, it goes so far, but you have to bear in mind what these situations have been and when might the situation change. And looking at the season long numbers, you mentioned the 1.6 per game. What I like to chase on 3-pointer props a lot of the time is just sheer volume. And he's only taking 4.3 a game. So 37% shooter. I think it's a little counterintuitive because people do think of him in terms of DFS. He's a scorer. When there's opportunity there, you can get a nice DFS score from him. But on the threes here, I think we can leave him a little bit short on that and chase that under 67%. Let's throw one more no house here. We've got about 12 minutes left in the show.
Any Mikal Bridges lines?
There are 2 Mikal Bridges lines that were just jumping out to me. They are our, looks like 5th and 6th best picks, both at 64%. So let's see which one you like better here out of these 2.
Okay.
If you had to pick one, would you go at 64% for Mikal Bridges rebounding under 5 rebounds, or would you take him to go over 4.5 assists?
I was hoping you were going to say the assist number because that's the one that I like the most. Again, the Suns are playing with like none of their top ball handlers at the moment, to the point where we're like, Saban Lee, got to get him in your DFS lineups tonight. That goes to show you just how dire things have gotten for the Suns, right? Saban Lee was a guy who the Detroit Pistons said, you know what? I don't think you're good enough to play for us. So, the last 3 games, 9 assists, 7 assists, 6 assists. I think that 4.5 is just way too low for this guy right now.
Yeah, that's the one that I would go after. I was on the No House show in the afternoon the other day, and we talked about that. And just, situationally, you don't think of him as a big-time assists guy by any means, but you get just enough of an uptick with all those guys and all those facilitators off the court. You get just enough of an uptick in his assist rate to support a nice over there. So I like that one a lot. taking a quick look into chat, looks like I might have missed a couple super chats here. So apologies to the Claw 28, who I know is around all the time, and Ace of Spade. I know you're both around here all the time. I did miss those as I was scrolling through, guys. Lots to keep track of here. They were asking, and we can try and work some stuff in here for games that have yet to lock. So Ace of Spade was wondering, would you prefer Darius Garland or Drew Holiday for DK tiers? I don't know if you can swap on tiers or not. I've never played tiers. And then the Claw was wondering the best play on DK 4,100 or under for an optimal rate.
So I prefer Drew Holiday for tiers. I think that Garland is going to be higher owned, right? I mean, like, I think a good way to think about it is when you're in the classic format, like Darius Garland is an $8,700 player, and Drew Holiday, I want to say he's 88. But regardless, both guys I think are good plays. I just give a slight edge to Drew, given that the team is without Giannis right now. So
I like that. Yeah, I mean, that just creates so much upside potential for him that if you're looking for some ceiling there, I think that's a way to go. Is that a cheat for you? Is that something that you do if you're playing tiers? Is that a cheat to just kind of look across and see where guys are priced out versus one another in the standard format?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, if $100 gap is not a big deal, but if you've got one guy who's like 82 and another guy who's 76, I'm probably going to lean towards the 8,200 guy just in a vacuum most of the time. So,
yeah, that's a good way to do it. Obviously, again, as always, with an eye toward news and situational upside and everything that we always talk about on these shows. But yeah, that's an interesting thing. Again, having never really dabbled in tiers, I never really thought about it. But that's a nice, easy, oh shit, I got 2 minutes to lock and I need to figure this out. Quick little shortcut to it. So I like that. Good call there. Let's see what's going on in this.
The other question was DraftKings player under 4,100.
Oh, yes. Yeah. That didn't want to leave that one on the table a second time.
So I think Saban Lee is number one for me at 3,700. Yeah. And then Dennis Smith Jr. is number 2 at 4K.
Okay. So hate the DSJ answer, but I totally agree with it. And obviously, I have to be on board with the Saban Lee one, just based on volume of them in my lineups. Looks like we got the DeAndre Ayton news. DeAndre Ayton is out for tonight, non-COVID illness. So Josh Okogie is available. So what is that doing for you? Instant reaction on the Phoenix lineups here with 8 minutes to go before the 7:30 game clock.
Well, the first thing I have to do is get all the DeAndre Ayton out of my lineups.
Yes.
But yeah, the instant reaction is I want to see who's going to be taking his place in the starting lineup. We've seen them go a few different directions. Like Dario Saric has started some games at center. I think Biyombo is a candidate to start, but I do think Jock Landale is ultimately the most interesting of the three options. He's the best on the per minute basis. He's priced at the minimum. So I think he is ultimately going to be where I end up settling. But yeah, you look at this Suns roster right now, and it is like, if this was their full-time roster, this would be the worst team in the league, and it wouldn't even be close.
Oh yeah, this would be a disaster of a team to be running out there every day, unless your one goal was to have Victor Wembanyama on the team next year. Then this might be the team that you want.
I'm gonna look and see what kind of number I can get on the Pacers right now, because the Suns were favored in this game. Even and again, that was with the assumption that DeAndre Ayton might play, but even now with him out, I can't imagine that the line's going to move drastically. Like, it's still probably going to be around a pick 'em, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, Pacers were, when we started the show, 4-point dogs, or at least when I did the run sheet. So that's going to swing, back, like you said, maybe toward even. But yeah, I think you get a nice number on them. Let me see what I've got 8 and wise in my lineups here. We got some 9 on that. We've got 8 o'clock from Minnesota. I definitely have too much 8 in these lineups. This is annoying. Okay, he's 76, so I can pivot most of it to Şengün still. And then, all right, we should be okay, right? Indy, Phoenix. Yeah. All right. I'm not going to sweat it and make the people watch me change lineups. I'll ride it out with the 730 shares and let them lock. And then I'll swap out Ayton as long as I had some viability there. And I think we've got enough with Şengün on the board for 200 more on the FanDuel slate. I can probably get to enough of him. And then whatever I'm leaving behind, I can pivot out in other ways. What's your overall plan? Like, assuming that a lot of the action trends away, you don't get to a ton of Biyombo, Londale for those Ayton shares that you have. What direction are you generally heading for them as you rebuild lineups here with 5 minutes ago?
So I will probably push some of them towards Şengün, but Şengün's already my highest owned center. So I will also probably funnel some of it towards Miles Turner. Again, like, who knows? Maybe today's the day he goes back to playing 30 plus minutes. And if he does, I think Miles Turner is always a candidate to go off. I'll take some down to Landale and see where I can reallocate those funds. But it's not going to be just a global swap type situation.
Yeah, it's I think my approach, I'm going to try and do that as much as possible. I'm going to just hit the old global swap with Ayton up to Şengün where I can. And then I'll worry about the extra $200 shares and those other ones on the FanDuel slate, because really, I'm leaving maybe some Mason Plumlee upside on the table there that I could pivot to at 73, which I do like. But I don't know, I tend not to go too out of my way to chase front court guys who are more collectors than creators of fantasy points is the way that I try and describe it. Cause I do think they're, somewhat replaceable parts. Am I making a mistake if I leave that? He's 7,300 and Ayton 76. So that could be in every lineup swap.
I don't think that you're missing out on a ton by, overlooking a 7,300 Mason Plumlee. It's different on DraftKings where he is 6,500. I think that's a little bit of a different story. And, the double bonus is kind of his thing, right? Those are the two categories you're playing him for. So I think that, going in a different direction on FanDuel is totally fine. On DraftKings, if you have time and you're playing and you had Ayton, I might try to funnel some of that in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, that price gap creates opportunity for you in other lineup spots. So that's a critical one, I think, to call out here with 3 minutes to go. That is a direction that I would tend to look there. And then what would you try and let's try and game it on another step. Like, what would you be looking to acquire in another spot? What would be the most critical next piece of that puzzle? You go, all right, Ayton, pay down Plumlee in center. Now what? Where am I spending that money?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would try. I think that the piece that I would be the most trying to get would be Anthony Edwards at small forward. So if that means I have to make a couple of swaps, I'm going to do it. But, just in terms of like projected raw points at small forward tonight, I have Edwards projected for 47.5 roughly. And I have Kuzma as second on that list at just over 40. So we're talking a 7.5 point gap. And if you want to talk about just pure ceiling, I have the gap even wider. So I think that when you're talking about a player with that big of a difference in terms of just scoring potential at a position, locking in the guy who's going to score the most points at a position is inherently valuable in tournaments where you're trying to score the most points.
Yeah, always upside there. And, it's not the shortest slate in the world, but it's also not the largest slate in the world. So there's upside in just going to that pure scoring differential. And he's projected, 3-4 points out ahead of basically everybody else than him positionally here. So I like that call. That's really good. And, it could create a situation where your spend up, your change, you might have a second opportunity there because you might be moving from, an $8,100 guy in Terry Rozier shooting guard to an $8,700 Anthony Edwards. Oh, those are FanDuel pricing, but you get what I'm saying. You might be moving from one tier that'll still leave you a couple $100 to even throw into another position. So I think there's nice opportunity from that Plumlee swap. But on the FanDuel side, we'll be going with the Şengün route, and then we'll be finding our way with the rest of the lineups. Anything else to call out here as we wind down the show? 7:29. That half hour went quick.
Let's go Big Blue.
Let's go Big Blue. I think my poor Giants, I was saying it before the show, I think my poor Giants are due to get stumped, but I'm rooting for them. I am firmly on board. I want to cash that Daniel Jones ticket while I've got the chance, because I'm not a believer, and I think he is coming back now. So let's go Giants. Speaking of football, though, we have no more shows the rest of today, but if you guys are playing football tomorrow, you might want to pick up and tune in for 12:30 tomorrow. No House Advantage Sunday NFL show. Right back with No House Advantage. The entire slate tomorrow of shows, again, brought to you by No House Advantage. I told you guys they were great sponsors. 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock after that 12:30 to 1, there's a 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock NFL deeper dive. That's with Lofty, Alex, and Ben. Then 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, there's an NFL Live Before Lock with Eric and Makajeski. And then we're coming back around 6:30 to 7:30. You're getting Josh on a Sunday with Eric Lindquist for the NBA Live Before Lock. So full day of action tomorrow, Sunday. Matt, you said you're not much of a Twitter guy, but tell people where they can find you out there in the world if they're looking for you.
At Matt LaMarca. Very easy.
Pretty complex spelling. I am searching for your favorite Bad Religion song title. Maybe you'll find me on Twitter. That is the NBA strategy show. Or nope, that was the NBA Live Before Lock. Strategy show was a lot earlier today. I'm getting sleepy. Got to go rebuild some of these lineups. We're punching out. Good luck tonight, gang. We're out of here. Thanks a lot.